It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Alex Rosin. Alex, you were born on the 31st of December 1940 in Klementov in Poland.
That's correct.
Wow.
Yes.
What do you remember from anything from your childhood?
Well, having been born right in the middle of the war, in fact the beginning of the war, certainly in Poland, I know that I was one of 3 children. I had 2 elder sisters, and when I was 6 months old, unfortunately my mother, Zikrani Vracha, she passed away from an illness called typhus. So hence I never knew her. If you can imagine Poland in 1940 with all the Nazis running around, my father at the age of 33 was left a widower with 3 little babies in his hands. Now he thought to himself, what do I do? Do I try to run with my children, safety, or something else? He had an idea. He went to the Rav of the very close town called Sosnowiec, where there was a very big Rav there, Hasidic Rav, and his name was Harav Engelard. My father came to him and he said, Rav, please advise me, what should I do? My wife has just passed away. I'm left with these 3 little children. So the Rav said to him, I've already advised other parents like yourself. What you should do is that you should go to a town called, in fact it wasn't even a town, it was a village called Dandowka. He said, in that village, all the people there are extremely, extremely poor. But for money, they are prepared to risk their lives and save and hide a Jewish child. My father then took his Rab's advice and he took us to this little village called Dandowka. He knocked at random at a house. Of course he came well prepared with a nice sum of money, and he knocked on the door and he said to this lady, who was called Boyko Katarzyna, he said to her, I will pay you in order if you can hide my children for the duration of the war. Are you prepared to do so? As I said to you, she was extremely, extremely poor. So of course when he offered this large sum of money, she accepted. And she said, yes, I will hide your children here. They will be safe with me. He took her name and address, the number of children that he hid with her, and he told her, he said, I've written because they were completely illiterate in this village. Ordinary, as we say in Hebrew, shikurim, peasants, real peasants. So he wrote a few lines in which he said, in the event that I don't come back alive, from here I'm going straight back to the Rav that gave me this advice. I will give him your name and address and how many children are with you. He made a sign just back with a cross. He left very few photos with her, and apparently he went away to try and save himself. Of course, as the time went on, I grew up in this house. I must tell you that in this house, she was so poor that there were many days, we didn't even have a piece of fresh bread. Till the age of 6.5 or nearly 7, I didn't even know what socks and shoes were. That's how poor she was.
And you remember, you have vivid memories
Yes.
of this time?
Yes, because I was there for 6 years in this house.
And your siblings, were they older than you?
I was there from 1940 till 1947.
And you were with your sisters?
I was with my sisters, but as I was only, a year old, so I knew nothing. And then, of course, eventually, I was told by this non-Jewish woman who was hiding us, that my elder sister, at the age of 8, having only been some 6 months in her house, she died of hunger.
Aye.
And she buried her in that little village.
Aye.
This was all when, later on, when I was 6.5, that she told me this story. I knew nothing. For 6.5 years, she never spoke a word about it. And then she said that your elder sister, I gave away to another couple because I could not support her. Because this Goyish woman, she had a little son of her own. So she said, I cannot support my son, you, and your surviving sister. So that's why I gave your second sister away to another couple. And of course, as I was growing up, I only saw the woman, she had no husband. So I saw her and her son and myself.
How old was her son?
Her son was practically my age,
And were
a
you,
year younger, a year older.
were you good friends? Did you have
We
connection?
spent, let me tell you, we spent 6 most wonderful years. Although there was such poverty, and we were very, very strong, like strong brothers. Because she sometimes went to work, when she found a little work. So we were left by ourselves practically all day, just to stay outside the house, because in those days there was no schooling. So of course, as we grew up, there was a tremendous bond between us.
Did you know that he wasn't your biological or real brother?
I did not know this till I was practically about to leave her house.
And the
At the
lady,
age of 6.5.
did you think she was your mother?
All along the 6 years, of course, it was the only person I saw. Even her family didn't ever come, never came to the house. So all I saw was were her and her son. And of course, I must be honest, she treated me exactly like her own son. No difference between us.
Alice, can I just say something
Yes.
here? I know she did it for ulterior motives for money, but there were many decrees that the Nazis did that if anybody was found harboring or hiding Jews, they would be killed. And they actually did kill many.
Well, that's what I said to you right at the beginning. She risked her life. Really risked her life. And not only that, not only if the Nazis came, because there were Nazis,
Or the
I will
Poles
tell you
could
later
have-
on
the Poles
in the
as
story.
well.
But even the neighbours, who were all Polish and non-Jews and very poor, they could have given her up. They could have denounced her.
And they most probably knew that you weren't her biological
Yes,
son.
because when I came on the scene, there was only her and her son. So of course, if the neighbours saw me, they obviously knew that that wasn't her son, but they never ever denounced her, and that was also a miracle.
It is a miracle.
Yes,
Because there are many instances where neighbours actually did.
and as I was growing up in this house, and this was of 1940. I came to a house. I stayed there till 1947, 2 years after the war. And then in 1947, because I must also say this, when my father wrote the few lines to this Goyish woman, he said to her that if I don't come back alive, when I return to this rabbi, he will tell me that someone after the war will come and take me out of this house and integrate me into the Jewish community. So then in 1947, that's exactly what happened.
Can I just ask, before
Yes.
we go here, did you have any idea that you were Jewish at this time?
I had no idea whatsoever. I used to frequent the church every Sunday morning. As you know, the Polish people are very strong Catholics. So of course every Sunday morning I went with her to church, and I knew nothing. As I said, all the 6 years I lived with her, she never spoke not about religion, and certainly not to who I really was and why I was with her. She never spoke a word.
And you spoke obviously fluent Polish.
That's the only language I knew. I grew up, and of course there was no schooling. I couldn't read or write, but that's what I spent.
Did you recall, I know it was, you were very young at this time, any Nazis or Germans coming into the village?
Yes. Some important I was coming to now. At one point, her son was called Bishu, what I called my brother, and we were, as I said, very strong brothers. One night we were in bed already and practically asleep, and suddenly there was a tremendous bang at the door and 3 Nazis came in. Because the Nazis, let me tell you, they knew very well that certainly these Polish peasants, for money, they were hiding Jewish children. The Nazis knew that. So they used to visit the houses. And at one night, 3 Nazis entered. I was already, I think about 3. They entered the house and they asked her, who are these children? So she said, what a question. Certainly they're my sons. They schlepped us out of our bed, asked us to take our pajamas down to see if we were circumcised. But the fact that I wasn't circumcised was the miracle that this Rav of this town, Sosnovich, at the beginning of the war, he wrote a letter to all the Jewish communities saying that any boy born from this day on must not have any bris. And the fact that I wasn't brised, this saved my life. Because when they saw that I was not circumcised, they went away.
That is just unbelievable.
But this I still have in my mind, and I can never forget for years and years and years when I saw them. Anyone I saw in uniform went right through my body, and I was terrified.
You still have memories of the Nazis coming into the house?
Yes, sometimes I used to have
nightmares.
Terrible nightmares for many, many years afterwards. Many years. And so as I was growing up in this house, as I said, I was now 6.5. One day we were playing outside the house. Of course, the lady said to us, who I called my mother, she said, you must never leave the house or never speak to strangers. Because after the war in 1945, the gypsies came right near our village. And what did the gypsies do? They kidnapped children off the streets and sold them. So she said to us, be very careful, never leave the village, never leave don't go any far without me. Okay? So that was the warning. But one day, as we were playing outside the house, we saw a man from a distance. And as he approached, we both saw him looking left, right, and he was obviously looking for something or somewhere. I, for a moment, had forgotten what my mother, my so-called mother, Boyko, said to us, and I approached him, and I asked him, what are you looking for? And I saw that he had a piece of paper in his hands. So he said, I'm looking for, because my father, when he gave this description of the house to the Rav, so the Rav obviously had it, and the Rav, who was the gentleman who eventually came to take me out, was the Gabbai of the Rav of Sosnovitz.
Who survived.
Who survived, and the Rav of course survived. And so he said, I'm looking for a house with red bricks and a lady called Boyko Katarzyna. Of course, when I heard Boyko Katarzyna, I immediately said, this is my mother. And if you could, his name was Simcha Rothfeld. And not only was his name Simcha, but when I said to him that this is my mother you're looking for, he had a big smile on his face and so happy. He said, I've been walking for the last 4 or 5 hours looking for this house and looking for your mother. Can you please take me to him? I said, yes. I took him aside. I don't know why. I shouldn't even have done it. Because this was the only person that came to our house. Anyway, I took him aside, briefly. And he stayed for about half an hour. We stayed outside. Then after he went away, he thanked us and went away. So coming back into the house, I said to my mother, who is this guy? Is he your brother? Is your family? She said, no, it's not my brother. It's not my family. He's just someone who asked me if I would like to work for him. As she was so poor, so she was looking for a little job. And he came to offer me a job. Okay. I was there, not even 6.5. So when she tells you this, you accept it. Anyway, to be brief, this same gentleman, Simcha Rothfeld, he didn't come once. In all, he came 5 times. In all, it was 6 times, but so all these times that he came, each time I asked my mother, what is he doing here? You've never went to work for him, so why is he still coming? And she said, and only then at the 5th time, because I said to her, listen, Mum, there is something fishy here. Each time you gave me a different story, and each time it had no sense at all. Now, I want the truth. Please, tell me the truth. What is this man doing here? Because at first I thought he's come to harm her. I didn't know who he was. I said,
Did he speak to you in the times that he came?
He hardly spoke to me. He spoke mainly to my mother. The 5th time when he went away, so I said to my mother, he's gone. Now I want you to tell me the truth and nothing but the truth. So she said, okay, my son. She told her son to go in his room, and she said, sit down, Alex, and I will now tell you the whole story.
And did she call you Alex?
Yes. Well, in Polish my name was Elek, not Alex. I changed the name when I came to England. I was sitting there, and before she could utter one single word, she burst into tears. I said, Mother, why are you crying? Did this man upset you? Did he hurt you? Did he threaten you with anything? No, my son. No. This is the story. 6 years ago, your father came to my house with you and your 2 sisters. He paid me a sum of money, and he asked me in exchange to look after you throughout the war. You are a Jewish boy. And the Nazis who came into our house, they want to kill all the Jewish people. And that's why your father brought you here and asked me to hide you throughout the war. Unfortunately, he never came back alive. But he told me that after the war, a Jewish man will come to take us out and to integrate us into the Jewish community. So I then said to her, you just spoke to me about my two sisters. So where are they? Where are my two sisters? She said, well, your elder sister, unfortunately, passed away in this house at the age of 8 from starvation. And my second sister, your second sister, I gave away to another couple. And that is what you are doing. Because in the very first words that she spoke, she said, this was the shocking part. She said, I want you to know that I am not your mother. And Bishu, my son, is not your brother. Can you imagine?
I mean,
6 years.
You must have been
day in, day out, not having seen any other person in the world except her and some neighbors. And then to tell me that she's not my mother, and this is not my brother. It was as if a 1,000-volt electric shock hit me at that moment. I thought I would never be able to get up from this chair that I was sitting on. But then I calmed down, and then she said to me, this gentleman who's been coming these 5 times, he hasn't come to see me. He hasn't come to offer me a job. He's come for you. This is the man that your father said would one day after the war come and take you away from here and take you back into the Jewish community.
Can I just ask, Alex, did you know anything about Jews or?
I knew nothing at all. In this village, they never knew what a Jew looked like. No Jew would ever set foot, because these were peasants and at times violent people, drunkards. So no Jew would ever risk coming to this village. So, and they never saw a Jew. So I could never have seen any Jewish people there.
And when you said that you're Jewish, did you ask her what does it mean? Or?
So I said, what are you talking about? What is Jewish? I said, what are you talking about? You're not my mother. That's not my brother. That I'm Jewish. What is Jewish? I've been going to church. I'm a Christian. I've been going with you every Sunday to church.
Can I ask, how was your feeling for the first time to know that this lady isn't your mother or it's not your brother? It must have been devastating.
But as I said to you, my life then was devastated. I could not believe, and I refused to believe what she was telling me.
Were you cross with her?
I was not cross with her because she loved me. We were very poor, but I found warmth and affection.
When she told you this, was she crying?
She was crying bitterly.
And did you cry? I mean, it must have been
Of
the
course.
most emotional.
The most emotional thing in all the 6 years of my life, as young as I was, this was something. If I hadn't broken up in pieces, that was also a miracle. That I managed to stay calm and accept the situation.
And how did you look at your brother now that you know that he's not your biological brother or your mother? Could you see them in the same eyes, or?
It made absolutely no difference.
It's amazing.
I loved her. I loved my brother. I can tell you, I've never seen such bond of friendship, brotherhood, as between him and myself.
And can I ask your brother, when he obviously found out as well that you weren't his biological, did it make any difference to him?
Not at all. We were so close that nothing mattered to him. Who I was, where I came from, that didn't matter to him at all. The fact that he looked at me as his brother, that's all.
Did you say you don't want to go, or you want to stay here? You didn't know anything else?
Well, at that point, I said, because the lady said to me, he was coming a sixth time, but this time you have to go with him, because that's what I promised your father.
Wow.
So of course, as you said, I did not want to go. How could I want to go? This was my life.
Nothing else.
I knew nothing else. So when she told me that she's going to come back in a week's time, so I said, then I asked her what day. And when she told me, I said to my brother, listen, you stand by the window, and when you see him coming, give me a sign, and I will run into the toilet and hide myself. And that's exactly what I did. When he came, my brother gave me the signal, and I hid myself in the toilet till he went away. But then when he went away, she said to me, he's going to come back, and you absolutely must go with him. So this is where, at this point, this time he came the sixth time. This time he didn't come on his own. He came with his wife, who was called Sonia, and they had several packets in their arms. I brought them into the house. They opened the packets up. Remember, we were so poor, I didn't even know what an orange was. I didn't know what a fruit was. They opened up and put it on the table, and I didn't know what a toy was. So one packet, they opened up a packet, and I saw two little trains, model trains, one for him and one for me. This was the first time I set eyes on a toy, and then I ate the fruit and so on. And then we stayed for a while, and she had such chen in her eyes. She had such a wonderful face, and she put both of us on her knees, and she kissed both of us. And I don't know, after a couple of hours, there was something inside me which suddenly said to me, Alex, if this is the wish of your father, that you should go with them, perhaps you should go. Although you're so attached to your mother and to your brother, but you should go. And at that point I said, as much as I was crying my eyes out, but I said, I'm prepared to go. And then of course she gave me a little case with a few things, and then I said to Simcha and Sonia Rothfeld, I said, please let me have a last look at the house that I grew up in, that I found so much love and affection. And I did that, and then we started walking towards the bus station. And as we started walking, I suddenly hear my brother running towards us. And as he came close to me, he got hold of my arm, and he said, Alec, why are you leaving me? He said to Simcha and Sonia, if you're taking Alec, you must take me as well. He's my brother. And he said to me, Alec, wherever you go, I will go. It reminds me of the story of Ruth and Naomi. That's what he said to me. We reached the bus station. Before we could get on, he already got on the bus and sat on the bus. And he refused to get off. And it took 3 men to schlep him off from the bus. He was howling, he was crying his eyes out. I was crying my eyes out. And then the bus left. On the way, when we came into the town, Sosnowitz, the big town, the first thing they did, Simcha Sonia, as I had no clothes, no shoes.
You had never been on a bus before? Have you ever been on a bus before?
I'd never even left the village.
So here you're seeing a town,
I'm saying a town for the first time in my life. So we went to different shops. They fitted me out with clothes, shoes, socks, hat, everything. And then we came to their apartment in Sosnowitz. It was a Thursday night, and I walked into this apartment, which was on the ground floor, and being Thursday night, what do you smell in the Thursday night? Smell of challis. That was the first thing. And of course they gave me to eat, and then as it was late, so I washed and put my pajamas and went to bed. Following morning I got up, it's Friday morning, and we had breakfast, and I see in the kitchen about 6, 8 freshly baked challis on the table. And on a tray, big tray, I see a whole lot of gefilte fish. And of course in Poland, in those days, there were no fridges. But on the mantelpiece by the window, there was a place where you could place food to cool down. Okay? We finished breakfast, and then Simcha and Sonia said to me, and by the way, her parents also survived the war, and they lived in the same apartment. So after breakfast they said to me, Alec, we haven't finished shopping for Shabbos yet, so we have to still go out. But when I saw the freshly baked challis, and I saw a tray of gefilte fish, I said to myself, how can I find an excuse not to have to go with them, to be able to stay in the house and grab hold of these lovely challis and the fish? So I said to them, Sonia, please, I beg you, I didn't sleep all night. I had nightmares about my brother's Bishu and my mother, and I'm so tired. Please, I beg you, let me stay. So I convinced them, and they went away. And when I saw them from the kitchen window, they were far away. So I went to the kitchen. I'm looking at the fish. The fish is looking at me, and it's saying, what are you looking at me? Eat us. Then I look, same thing, I'm looking at the challis. The challis look at me, and they said, Meshigana, what are you looking at? And I got hold of the challah, and I got hold of a piece of gefilte fish, and I started eating. For the first time, I was eating real food. So much so, it was so delicious, that I finished a whole big challah and about 3 or 4 pieces of gefilte fish. Then, having satiated myself, I went quickly to my bed because I saw them coming, so I pretended I was asleep. Suddenly the door opens, and 2 minutes later I hear Sonia shouting away, Then she comes into my room and she said, Alec, what have you done? You've eaten half the gefilte fish for Shabbos and the challah. I said, what? Why are you accusing me? You just woke me up. You saw I was asleep. How could I haven't eaten a thing? And in those days, just where we lived, there were millions of cats roaming around. So I said, you're accusing me? Look, where do we live? Where was the window? It was open. And the fish was on the window. The cats. He jumped up and he had all the fish. So her husband Sonia said, leave him alone, calm down, and then of course she understood. And I must be honest, I grew up in this house. He was the governor of the Rav of Sosnovich.
And there was still a community after the war?
Well, the Rav had a shul. It was a very, very small community. And
the Rav survived the war?
Yes, well, of course. He survived. And then, this was Friday nights, he took me to shul. Simcha took me to shul. He introduced me to the Rav, the rabbi in the shul, and I remember him well.
Well, this was the same Rav that your father had gone to?
Yes. And this, where I now was, the parents of Sonia's parents were Hasidim, very from. Simcha Sonia were Bob of Hasidim, very from, of course. And the very first thing, he started telling me what is a Jewish boy, what is Jewish religion, what is Judaism. And he started teaching me very slowly and with tremendous patience the Aleph Beis and a few brachas.
How did it feel going into a synagogue for the first time after being in a church?
It seemed extremely strange. Yeah, I couldn't understand a word, what was being said. Everything inside was completely different from from the church I used to go to. But
were there any children?
There were no children in the shul. No children. I was the only child. To be brief, I grew up in this house, and I stayed there for 6 months.
And they were kind to you?
These were not only Hasidim, they were tzaddikim, 100% sincere, loving, affectionate, Warmkeit. This was, in fact, this was what kept me going. This was kept me mentally stable, because I found love where I was hidden with the Goethe, and I now found love where I was now living. And this kept me going, kept me mentally stable. And to be brief, I stayed for 6 months in this house, now thinking, of course, having spent 6 months, that these were going to be my new parents. And I was so happy.
Did you go to any schooling at this time?
There was no schooling.
But they taught you privately?
He taught me some Yiddishkeit. He tried to teach me very slowly how to read.
And he could speak Polish?
They were Polish.
But they could not, and you didn't understand
They
Yiddish?
were Polish, but when they didn't want me to understand, they spoke in Yiddish.
And you didn't understand Yiddish?
Of course not.
Just like you hadn't heard it.
I lived as a Christian.
And were there any children that you could associate with at this time?
Yes, there were some neighbours' children.
Did they have any children themselves, this couple?
No, because they were only married 1 year before I came on the scene. So they have no children. And in the course of the 6 months, I was a very happy child. I grew to love them, and as I said, I honestly thought and hoped that these would become my new parents.
Can I just ask you, and at this time, did you ever feel maybe we should try look for my sister? Did that thought
This you've got to be patient. I'm sorry, I've said such a long story. Anyway, I know that before I will answer your question. Just before I left my mother and my brother, Simcha Rothfeld asked her, "Can you please take me, show me the house where you put Alex's sister?" And she did. She took him to show where my sister was. But when they knocked in the door, this woman came out and she said, "Yes, what do you want?" Of course she knew Boyko, because Boyko gave her my sister. But when she saw Simcha Rothfeld, and he said, "I have come to take," her name was Basha, I've come to take Alex's sister with me." She said, "What? Who are you? What are you? And if you don't go away from here, I will call the police." But my sister was just behind the woman, and he saw her, but he couldn't take her out. She banged the door in his face, and he had to leave without taking my sister. So, and from then on, I never saw my sister again. I never saw her anyway. Then, at the end of 6 months, in 1947, there was a big pogrom called the Kielce pogrom. Kielce was not far from this town Sosnowiec. I don't know if you know this.
If you could just relate.
The Kielce pogrom was how did it come about? The Polish mamzerim, they accused the few Jews who survived the war of stealing children from the streets, number one, and even worse, having killed a young boy, to take his blood,
it's a blood libel,
to make the matzahs for Pesach. This was the pogrom. And these bandits, they used to go around the houses to see if the children were in fact of the Jewish people, or they were just from the streets. Just at that moment, in this pogrom, my new parents, or my new foster parents, they were terrified that, because if the pogrom was going to continue, and these bandits knew that this couple were only married for a year, and I was 6 years old, they would have kidnapped me and taken me out away. But Min HaShamayim, the Rav of Sosnowiec, before when he was about to leave, because he was invited as a Rav in America, so he gave over all the lists that the Polish Jewish parents gave him, and he gave it over to his Gabba, who I was living with, to Simcha, and the Rav went away to America. But he said, "I've got a very wonderful friend, a Rav in England, who will come to Poland, and you, Simcha, must take this list and go around all Poland with this English rabbi and try and find as many hidden children as possible." So this Rabbi Schoenfeld eventually came, but when he came into our house, he came dressed in a uniform. And of course, when I saw him, I thought he was a Nazi. And I started trembling. So Sonia said, Alex, this is not a Nazi, this is the English rabbi that is going to take us and all the children he can find out of Poland and to go to England. Okay? Anyway, so this English rabbi and Simcha Rothfeld went around all Poland and to try and find as many of these hidden Jewish children as possible. At one point, Rabbi Schoenfeld, he knew that children were hidden in private houses, in convents, in monasteries, so he went around to all these places. And when I was older, this same Rabbi Schoenfeld told me, it's a well-known story, that one night he went to a convent. He knocked on the door, and the sister opened the door, and she said, "Can I help you?" He said, "Yes." He gave her a story. Once he was inside, he said, "The reason I'm here is because my daughter, she wants to come and join you. And before I can agree to that, I wanted to see for myself what the place was like." That's how he managed to get in. Once he was in, really in, then he said to the chief sister, "Do you by any chance have any Jewish children hidden here?" She said, "No." Of course, he was a rabbi. He was 2 feet tall, blue eyes, very handsome, fantastic personality, and he didn't accept no as an answer. He said, "Are you sure?" They said, "Yes." He then started saying Shema Yisrael. The children were sleeping already, in bed. And as he finished the first paragraph, one by one, they got out of their beds and came to his side. In all, 9 Jewish children, who they said they didn't have, they were all by the side of this rabbi. He said, "Now that I've got them, I have a paper to say I can take them out." And he took them all out. Eventually, he managed to find, in fact, he came twice, but in my time, he managed to find, together with Simcha Rothfeld, he found 130 Jewish children, all orphans. And then, of course, the day came when Sonia Rothfeld told us that we would all go with this rabbi to England. But at the last moment, she said to me, "I'm terribly sorry, Alex, but this rabbi just told us that he can only have papers to take children under 16 out of Poland. And as we are adults, unfortunately we cannot come with you." So can you imagine that once again,
you're going to be separated.
I'm going to be separated from the people I loved.
And they were willing to go?
Who?
Simcha and his wife.
No, they couldn't go.
I know, but they wanted to go.
Of course they wanted to go,
Yeah.
but they couldn't go. They said, "Well, you have to go with this rabbi and with all these children. And please God, I'm sure that Rabbi Schoenfeld will eventually find a place for us to come." And so we arrived. I said goodbye once again with tears, screaming, and we arrived in England.
How did you go by boat?
We came by boat.
It's the first time you were ever on a boat, obviously.
Yes. The boat itself took 5 days to go to Scotland. In the first 2 days, one particular moment, Rabbi Schoenfeld, he said, because Rabbi Schoenfeld could only speak English and Yiddish, but he brought with him 2 Polish people to translate for us. And at one point he said to them, tell these children to repeat word for word what I'm going to say. And of course Rabbi Schoenfeld thought that this was the end. The waves were so tremendous. The boat was going from side to side. And we really thought that this was going to be the end. So we all said the Shema Yisrael together. And then, third day, it was much calmer. We arrived in Scotland. We stayed in Scotland. There was a very rich man who had a castle, and he gave the castle over to Rabbi Schoenfeld and all the 130 children.
Was it a Jewish man? Or?
A Jewish man, sure. A Jewish man, a big philanthropist in Scotland, well known.
And can I just ask, when you were on the boat and when you met the other children, similar ages yourself, did you develop a bond, a friendship with these other children?
Yes, I was the youngest of all the children. And I developed a very good contact with two girls who, after a time, when we re-met, she said, I was like your little mother on the boat. She looked after me on the boat. And we had contact all these years. And then, of course, we came to England, and Rabbi Schoenfeld put an advert in the Jewish Chronicle. It's a Jewish, like you would say, Jerusalem Post.
It's still going, the Jewish Chronicle.
Jewish Chronicle, so you know. There are 130 orphans who've just come from Poland. Anyone wishing to adopt, this is the new number of telephone and the address. He organized he bought a very big center to accommodate all of us. In London. From Scotland we went by train.
How long were you in Scotland?
Scotland, I think it was 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks we took the train to London. In London we came to this big, huge centre. In this centre we were all to stay till someone would come and pick us up. And every day, of course, Rabbi Schoenfeld managed everything from food and so on, lodgings and so on. And every day people would come and choose a boy and girl and take them in. I was left in the last 5 of the 130 children. And I said to myself,
does nobody want me?
What's wrong with my face that nobody wants me?
This must have been devastating. How old were you at this time?
What?
How old were you at this time?
Not even 7. Not even 7. Because I was 31st of December. And this was May 1947. May. Just to tell you how I stayed mentally intact. I could have broken up, I could have been shattered to pieces, I could have become mental, but no. Hashem wanted me to stay and to survive. And at each step of I found love. Now, so as I was thinking, so then Rabbi Schoenfeld came to me and said, there is a lady who has come for you at last. This lady took me to a house in London, North London, and of course she was Russian, I was Polish, the language barrier, but her neighbour downstairs was Polish. So she brought him up and she told him to tell me that she is not going to be my new mother. My new mother is her sister. But her sister at the moment is in America visiting family. But her sister asked her to go and pick up a boy and keep me till her sister came back from America. And this is what she did. And after 3 weeks being there, this called her Uncle Max, they had, by the way, Uncle Max and Auntie Minnie, they had a daughter called Betty. She was then 13 years old. 13. And then at the end of 3 weeks, first of all, he took me to shul, to a new shul, and at the end of 3 weeks, the last Shabbos, he said to me, this Shabbos, your new parents have come back from the States, and I'm going to introduce you to a new father in the shul. So in the middle of the tefillah, he took me to the seat where my father was sitting, and he said, this is going to be your new father. He is the one who is going to adopt you. And also, even now I see my father, he was of course very frum as well. And he came from a very, very frum family. His father in Russia was Rosh Yeshiva.
Was he more Litvish or was he more
My father was, he wasn't Litvish. He wasn't Litvish, no. But my father was not a Chassid, but he was more Litvish than anything else, yes. Anyway, so I met my father, and then after shul, I went with him to my new house.
And your mother you hadn't met yet?
And no, now entering the house.
How does a child of 7 cope with this?
I meet my new mother. She came over and kissed me, took me in her arms, and I saw the most beautiful Shabbos table. And slowly, they had no children of their own.
Were they married many years?
They were married many years. He was 50 years old when I came to him. My mother was, I think, was 48. They came from a very large family. And I grew up. The first thing he did was, of course, to take me to a Jewish school. And of course, even in the Jewish school, it was tremendously difficult. I only knew Polish. And in this school, you had to learn Polish and Yiddish at the same time. Anyway, I was determined to learn very quickly, which I did, Baruch Hashem. And I grew up, and I grew up beautifully in this house.
Were they very loving?
They were most loving people. I made a lot of friends from my school, and we lived in a very big, very large house of 11 rooms. And so my mother, she said to me, ask your friends round Shabbos afternoon for tea and cakes. And so they would, all my friends would come every Shabbos afternoon to my house. And as you just made a comment, so I can tell you, from there, I joined a very frum organization called Pirchei Agudas Yisrael. It was a very religious, for an Oneg Shabbat. And on the way going to that place, one of my friends turned around to me and said, you know, Alex, I'm very jealous of you. I said, what? Why? Looking at you and your parents, the warmth, the affection I see. I've got real parents, but I haven't got that affection and love that you have here.
And this is a little child of...
This is a child with what, 9 years old. 9 years old. At the age of 9, first of all, I must tell you, the first thing that my father, when I came to him, knowing that I wasn't circumcised, he had to make arrangements for a bris. So he called a moel, and the moel took one look at me and he said, you cannot risk making a bris on this boy. I was 7 But when I went to the hospital with my mother every single week, the doctors thought I was 4 years old.
Why? Because you were so
I was had
malnourished.
malnutrition. I was so ill. I was like a matchstick. So I had to wait a year and a quarter till I was breast. And then of course a Moyle came, who was also a doctor, and I had the breast at the age of 8 and 3 months.
I'm sure they must have made a lovely ceremony.
Oh yes. Oh, if you can imagine how many people. My father was a gabba in the shul.
In which part of London were you in?
North London, Stamford Hill. I lived at number 1 Clapton Common, London E5. Stamford Hill was like the Bnei Brak of England. There were so many Hasidim there. And then at 9 years old,
Do you remember the name of the shul?
yes, of course. The shul, we went to 2 shuls. We had a weekday shul and a Shabbos shul. Weekday shul was called Springfield, because that was the area. It was called Springfield Shul. And the other one, Shabbos one, was called Grove Lane Shul. And then as I said, in the age of 9, my father said to me, next week we have to go to court for me to adopt you officially. So then he said to me, having said this, he said to me, what name would you like to take? The judge is going to ask you, what name would you like to take? But my name family name was called Rebenstock. Alec Rebenstock. And my new name, this new family, they were called Annie and Joseph Rosin. So my father asked me, so I thought to myself, this was rare. I've been 2 years with them, and I was so happy with them. I was the happiest child on earth. I said to myself, what do I know of my Polish name?
Sure.
I know nothing. I know no one. And these people, they are my new parents. They give me love and affection. I said to my father, I want to take your name.
Wow.
I want to be called Alex Rosin.
You must have been very emotional. So,
Oh.
wow.
The next day,
Wow.
we went to court, and the judge asked me, and without any hesitation, I said, my name, Polish name is Alec Rebenstock, but from today onwards, I would like to change my name and be called Alex Rosin. And that's the name I have at present day.
Wow.
I grew up at schools. I did all my exams, A-levels, whatever you call it, baccalaureate.
And you had many friends.
I had loads of friends. And then eventually I left this very religious organization and I joined Bnei Akiva. Because my mother was a very big Mizrahi worker. She was very friendly with the chief rabbi of England, who was called Chief Rabbi Jacobowitz. And she was very friendly with it, right? Because she was a big worker for Mizrahi. So the chief rabbi knew me as personally as well. And
Did you have any contact with Rabbi Schoenfeld after you were placed
after
with them?
2 years in my first school, which was practically a Haredi school, at the end of 2 years, I became very unhappy. And because I don't want to go into all the details, it's so long, but I had a very nice experience. I saw a teacher of Kodesh, Hebrew teacher, hitting his own brother who was in my class with this cane. And when I saw this, all the memories of Poland with Nazis hitting all came back to me. And at the end of this 2 years, it was just before the summer holidays, I said to my father, I'm not going back to that school. If you want me to go to school, you have to find me another Jewish school. Which he did. This new school, he took me just before the holidays. It was called Avigdor School, Avigdor Primary, and the headmistress was called Dr. Judith Grunfeld. She was also a refugee from Germany. Her husband was a Dayan in London, Bethlehem. And your answer to your question, Rabbi Schoenfeld, he used to come to the school every Friday morning in assembly time to give a little Dvar Torah to us. So in fact I saw him for years, every Friday morning. I had this shaykhs, this contact with him.
And he obviously recognized you
and not only that, but after the assembly he called me over to his office and he always gave me a packet of sweets. And he used to ask me, Alex, are you happy in your new home? How do you find your parents? And I had contact with him right up to the day he died in 1984.
So he had a brain tumor, I think.
At the end, yes.
At the end.
Anyway, so I grew up, I did all my studies. Then I went to Gateshead Yeshiva. You've heard of Gateshead?
Sure.
I worked in Gateshead for nearly 4 years. And then, at the end of 4 years, my parents were aging, and I thought to myself, I thought of Parnassa. I must do something, I must study.
To earn a living.
I must earn Parnassa. In my heart of hearts, from the age of 12, I wanted to be a teacher in a Jewish school. And from the age of 12, I never changed. I wanted to do two things: to be a Jewish teacher in a Jewish school, where I would have no problem Shabbat and Yom Tov, and I also wanted to be in the world of Klei Kodesh. So when I finished Gateshead, I joined Jewish College of London. Jewish College.
That was the main
rabbinical
sure.
seminary. And at the same time I said to myself, I want to be a teacher, so I have to have a degree. So I joined London University, and I did both. And I achieved both my goals.
Did you ever want to get smicha to become?
Yes. In fact, when I was leaving Gateshead, they were so upset. I was, although I said to myself, I was a very good Talmud, very good pupil. They loved me, Rosh Yeshiva. And he said,
who was the Rosh Yeshiva?
In those days we had two Rosh Yeshivas. One was called Harav Leib Gurewitz, and the second one was called Harav Leib Lopian.
Lopian, yeah.
Who was the son of Harav Elya Lopian.
So there was Lapin, which is connected to the family in South Africa.
So these were my two Rosh Yeshivas, and they both, when I said I was leaving, they couldn't believe it. Why? You want smicha? Well, give you smicha. I said, unfortunately, your smicha will not count. In those days, the shuls Jewry was so anglicized that they would not accept the smicha, even from the biggest yeshiva in the world.
Wow.
You had to go through Jewish college, rabbinical, in order to be a rabbi in the shul. So I told them. So that's why I said I must go, because for them, Jewish college, they said, "What? You're going to the Memte Sharituma?"
Because it had secular.
Yes. I said, It might have been 50 years ago, but today it's no longer Memta Sherat Duma. It's got good Rabbonim there, good lecturers, Yira Shemaim. So I said, please.
And your parents were supportive?
My parents, they were supportive in anything I did.
That is wonderful.
The most wonderful tzaddikim that any son could wish
That's
for.
very rare. That's very rare that you'd have that.
Oh, it's the love there. I can tell you that when my mother passed away in 1967, my father passed away in 1973. When he passed away, it was too much for me because already I saw my mother buried. And then when at the funeral, I loved him so much that I wanted to throw myself in the grave, and people had to hold me back from falling in.
Sure, Alex, wow.
That was the love that was between us.
And how old were you? 67, you were?
67 was 1940, 37. Anyway, let's carry on with the story.
You go to Jews College?
I'd finished with Jewish College. The Chief Rabbi Jacobowitz, who I told you was personally friendly with us, he gave me my first post.
And you got smicha?
Yes. He gave me my first post in Scotland. No, first post he offered me Australia, Melbourne, Australia. I said, Rav, you know my parents, elderly people, they've never had children of their own. They adopted me, they gave me love and affection. How can you even think that I should leave my parents at their age? So then he gave me the second proposal, Scotland. So I said, Scotland's nicht so gefährlich. It's only 400 kilometers. I can come for Shabbos, I can come every week. And I accepted that post in Scotland.
Where in Scotland?
It was in Glasgow as assistant rabbi. The Rav of the shul was Rav Gottlieb, who was also Av Beis Din of Scotland. Then after 3-4 years, I had an invitation from London, from an organization called the Federation of Synagogues, who are in conjunction with United Synagogue. I don't know if you know. I got letters saying that would I be interested in a position in South London, a place called Croydon, which is in Surrey, London. I thought myself 4 years in Scotland, Diana, and I accepted the job. I came to Croydon, and after a year, I met my future wife, who was a young girl from Paris, and eventually we married, Baruch Hashem, in my shul,
Wow.
in Croydon, having all the Dayanim, Rabbonim.
How old were you at this time?
27, I think. And it was a beautiful chasana.
Your parents must have been...
My mother wasn't there anymore.
Oh, your mother was, but your father was.
My father was, yeah. Because not long after he passed away. And then of course we had our 2 children in London. And everything was fine, and I was teaching, I was in shul, and I was also teaching in school. And then after 17 years, in 1986, my French wife, Sakran Brocha, she wanted to go back to France. So she asked me, could we go and live there? So,
She had family in France?
All her family were in France. She was Sephardi, of Tunisian origin. Big, very large family, wonderful family as well. And who I fell in very easily with them, adapted very well. And that's how we came to France in 1986. I came to I put my girls in the Jewish school. I was in another Jewish school, and everything was fine. And then, unfortunately, of course, and then before all this, I always thought, all my life, I always thought of this my second sister and my brother. I said, Rabban Shalom, I know, I have a feeling that my sister, I know she must be in Poland, but I'm sure she must be alive somewhere. And my brother, because we completely, I had no contact. And I always said to myself, I never want to return to Poland. Not to Poland, not to Germany. But in 1995, I was due to marry my eldest daughter. It was her wedding. And just few days before the wedding, in a dream, my real Polish mother, whom I never set eyes on, she came into my bedroom and she began to speak to me.
In a dream?
In a dream. I couldn't see her face. All I could hear was her words. What did she say to me? She said, my darling son, I want to tell you, first of all, I want to wish you a very big mazel tov for your daughter's wedding. But more important than that, I want to tell you what wonderful nachas I've got from you. She finished those words and she went away. I got up with a scream. I think the whole building must have heard me. Anyway, I told my darling wife, who was called Solange, my two children, my eldest daughter is called Anne Sonia, and my youngest daughter is called Rebecca Jane, or I call her Rivki. Anyway, all was going fine. And then one Shabbos, the Rav of my shul, I now lived in Créteil, in suburb of Paris. One Shabbos in his Devar Torah, he announced that the whole Kehillah, the whole community, were going on a one-day visit to Auschwitz. And anyone who are interested to come or go should contact the secretary Sunday morning. So, of course, they're married. My daughter married. Everything was fine. And now I hear this visit to Auschwitz, which in my mind I never wanted to go. But somehow the fact that my real mother came to me and spoke to me, it's as if she gave me a chizuk to tell me, go. And so Sunday morning I said to my wife, Solange, I said, my darling Solange, I now would like to go. And she said to me, if you go, I'm coming with you. And so I went Sunday morning to the shul to book my place, but they knew, some of them knew my story. So when I came to pay, they said, no, you are our guest. Not you, not your wife, pay. We honor that you come with us. So we went to Auschwitz. So now it was a few days before the visit, and in my mind, my little head, somehow I said to myself, and of course, when Rabbi Schoenfeld took me out from Poland, he gave me certain papers to tell me in which town I was born, how old I was, and that I had one surviving sister in Poland in a certain town. All this was written down. These papers I kept for over 50 years in my desk. So now I'm about to go to Auschwitz. I said to myself, perhaps I should make a photocopy of all these yellow bits of papers now and take them with me to Auschwitz. And this I did. I took them and we took a plane, we arrived in Auschwitz, and we were 250 people. We were divided into groups with French, Polish speakers, not Jewish of course. And in this particular group that I was in, this young lady who was explaining, this Polish guide, the way she was explaining, really, it's like we could say Lahavdil, Dvarim hayotzim min halev, words coming direct from the heart. At 1 o'clock, we all dispersed for lunch, because we brought lunch with us, of course, everything kasher. But I said to myself, Alex, before you go, stop this lady, stop this guide, and speak to her. So when everybody went away, I said,
this was a Polish guide?
This Polish guide. I've never said guides before. I said, Madam, could you spare me 5 minutes of your time before you leave? I have something very important to ask to speak to you. She said, yes. Bekitzer, I told my whole story. And as I was telling her this, she was crying. I said, I don't know why. I've never set eyes on you, but I have a feeling that as you work here, perhaps you can help me. I'm trying to trace my family for years without any success. Perhaps you can help me. Are you willing to help me? She said yes. I gave her all my papers and she said, if I can help you, I will. The afternoon session went by. At the end of the session, I gave her my phone number, my address in Paris, and I said, if you can help me, please be in touch. A month and a half after this visit, I received a letter from her. In the letter, she says to me, Alex, I've got very good news for you. I have found your brother.
She found your brother, wow.
She found my brother. Not only found him, but I've already been to his house and I told him that you're alive and you live in France. And he told me that he's been searching for me for years. But of course, having changed my name, he could no longer find me. But he said he was so happy that to know that you are alive. That's what she wrote to me, my letter. And he is waiting for a letter from you. But I said to her name was Edwige. I said, Edwige, I can't speak Polish. I forgot all my Polish. She said, that's no problem. You write this letter in French to me, and I will translate it and give it over to you.
You forgot your Polish?
I've heard all my Polish. And that's what I did. I wrote a letter in French, and she translated it and gave it over to him. Briefly, to be brief, few letters between us. In his third letter, he sent me a few photos. One of myself as a little boy, one of himself as a little boy, and one of himself as a grandfather holding the baby in his child in his arms. And for the first time in my life, he sent me a photo of my father.
Did he have a photo of your father? Wow. This is amazing. How did he have the picture of your father?
Because my father, as I told you at the beginning, He left a few photos before he went away.
Oh, with his mother,
With the Polish woman.
with the Polish woman.
Yes. And
It's amazing that you have these pictures.
and
When you saw the picture, how did you get the picture? Did he?
he said in the letter that he wrote to me.
And this was the first time you've ever seen.
He sent me a very small. He sent me the original photo of my father that he left. My father left, and I photocopied it.
And Alex, can I ask, how was your reaction when you saw the picture of your biological father, of your father? I mean,
At first I had a shock, because looking at his face, it's very hard for me to say this, but I said to myself, he looks a little like whom?
a little like. I see what you're saying.
What would you think?
I don't want to say, but
You know what I mean.
yeah.
That was my first reaction. But then,
It's just the moustache. So it's
that's all. But then, I was so overwhelmed that all my life, I have been praying to Ribono Shalom. I said to him, I've never seen them. I didn't know them. But Ribono Shalom, even in the dream, let me see their faces. Even in the dream, let me see what they look like. All my life. And then when I saw this, I said, thank you, Ribono Shalom. However, my mother, because he left a photo of my mother as well. But unfortunately, in those days, the photos were very small. And there was a photographer who came to the house, to my sister's house. I'll tell you in a minute, my sister. And he said, if you want me to enlarge the photo, let me have it. I will go away and I'll come back and give you an enlarged photo. He took the photo, and unfortunately, the only photo was gone.
he never came back.
Never came back. Now, to carry on. So now I'm writing letters to my brother, and I was so happy that my brother was alive that I wrote back to him and I said, I'm so excited, I'm going to come and see you in Poland. But I said, before I come, if it's really true and sincere what you told me in your letters, that you've looked for me all over the world and you still love me, then I've got a very important job for you. My question to you is, before your mother passed away, did she ever take you to the house that she put my second sister in? In his reply, in his letter, he said, yes, she did take me, and I did see your sister. But the only thing I remember, I don't even remember not a first name, not a surname, nothing at all, except that she lived on a little farm in I knew which town. So when he told me this, that he saw her on the little farm, I said to him, now that you've told me this, before I come, I want you to knock on every farm in this town till till we find her. Okay? That was in my last letter. Now, I have bought tickets to go to Poland. Now, but if I come to Poland, how am I going to converse with my brother? So I'm in contact every single week with this guide, Polish guide.
The one that was at Auschwitz?
Yes. And now in her letters she says, I'm no longer just your Polish guide. I feel like a member of your family.
Wow.
A malach min hashamayim.
Not Jewish?
Not Jew, Polish.
Polish.
She was just a real malach min hashamayim.
Like an angel.
So I pick up the phone and I've got to tell her when I'm coming. And I said, of course, I hope you'll be there to translate for me. This was in August. So she told me in one of the letters, she was not just a Polish guide in Auschwitz, she was also a teacher of French in a school. So when I told her that I'm coming tomorrow night. Okay? So she said, you are lucky because I'm off the whole of August from Auschwitz and from teaching. And I will stay with you for the whole week that you will be there. All day and every day.
Unbelievable.
And her last words were, she said, what did you ask your brother to do? I asked him to knock on every farm door. He has done his job. And he has found your sister.
Wow. Yes, this is
And
unbelievable.
not only has he found your sister, I have already been to your sister's house and told her that tomorrow night you're coming to Poland.
And how did she react?
I came, and unfortunately, the guy told me, I'm so terribly sorry, Alice, your sister will not be able to be there because she's a little ill. She's got some cold. But the following day, we will all go there. So we went to my brother's house. My brother, he had his married son and grandchild there. He had his daughter there, all with bunches of flowers for me. And just with my brothers, even at the airport, they thought some big star had come along. Anyway, we spent.
How was your first reaction when you saw your brother?
It
After all
was
these years?
something overwhelming
On both sides.
on both sides. We embraced each other for perhaps an hour.
Sure.
We spent
This was a genuine bond, a genuine.
Yes.
Did he live in the same town, or he had moved to?
He lived in the same town, the town that I left, Sosnowiec. And his son also lived in that town.
But out of that very poor village he had moved.
Pardon?
The very poor village that you were living in.
Yes.
He had moved from that village, where his mother was.
Yes. He moved to the big town, Sosnowiec. And then the following day, we arrived at my sister's. She was on the farm. She was always all her life she was on the farm. And I arrived there,
Wow.
and we embraced. I suppose we couldn't leave hold of each other. We were crying in the streets. It was like Yaakov and Yosef when they met after 22 years.
But this was
after 58 years. Because she was 4 years older than I. So she already knew me as a baby. But after this, she was separated. So the first thing, so here we are in my sister's house, the Polish guide, my brother, his married son, and his daughter. all there. First thing I entered the house, my sister had a on the window she had a ledge, and she grabs hold of a little photo. What is this little photo? Of whom? Of me.
Wow.
Little tiny boy. And she said, she's holding this photo in front of everybody. She says, "My darling brother, all these years I have kept this photo, and every night before I go to bed, I lift up my eyes and I pray to God, and I ask him, God, if my brother is still alive somewhere, please bring him at least once before I die." And here you are. God has answered my prayers. That was that. Can you imagine the scene? The next day, I asked my brother, "Can you please take us to the house where I was staying with you?" So we all went there.
With your sister?
Everybody. My sister, the whole entourage. Come to the place, no sign of house. So I said to my brother, "Where's the house?" He said, "Well, our house was right in front, and they demolished all the houses in front to enlarge the pavement, whatever. But the houses behind us, of course, were all standing there." And I said to myself, if I knock on the door of one of these houses, maybe someone will recognize me or know something about me. I knock on the door. A very elderly lady, somewhere must have been at least in her 90s, she opens the door, she takes one look at me, and she she starts shouting. She's pronouncing my name, Alec! She takes me, embraces me in her arms. And through the guide, she says, "When your mother had a little job and she left you on your own with your brother, I came in to look after you.
Wow.
And I used to comb your sister's hair." Can you imagine? 58 years. She recognized me. She called out my name. Even the guide practically fainted. Anyway, the next important thing I did, I took everybody to Krakow. Okay? Why did I take it to Krakow? I wanted to take it to the shul in Krakow. You know Krakow?
Was it to the Ramah shul?
To the Ramah shul. And I said to the guide, and I filmed all this.
Was it far away from where you...
Two hours by bus. Exactly 2.5 hours by bus. We come to Krakow, we come into the Ramah shul, which was functioning already.
I was there in July. Last year I was in July in Krakow, in the Ramah shul.
How was?
I was there nearly a year ago. I was in the Ramah shul.
Okay. I said to the guy, "Please translate to my sister everything that I tell her." I took my sister, put her in front of the Oren Kodesh. I opened the Oren Kodesh. I said to my sister, "Please kiss this sefer." And then I said to her, "My darling sister, I want you to know that you were born a Jewish girl. You're not a Catholic. You were born, same as I, of Jewish parents, a Jewish girl. But unfortunately, our parents were killed, they died We were separated. You went one way, I stayed one way. You grew up as a Catholic and I grew up as a Jew. But I pray to Almighty God that just as you were born a Jewish girl, I hope that you will die a Jewish girl. She kissed the cemetery. Not a word, not a hesitation. Her daughter was there as well, and her son-in-law, and the grandchildren.
And did she have a husband?
She has and her husband. He was a shikar goy.
But they all came?
They all came. And then after that, I took them to there was a kosher restaurant there. I took them all for lunch. And after the lunch, we took them into the cemetery.
By the Ramosh?
By the Ramosh. And I felt in myself, having done this, it was like something off my shoulders, a big burden. I was so proud that I could do this. And then, of course, I visited Poland 6 times in all. The 5th time, of course, I went to her daughter's house. I saw the grandchildren, her husband, and I was able to converse with the husband because I speak German as well, and he spoke a little German. So at least with him, I was able to converse. But I had my guide in all the visits I made, 6 visits. She was always with me.
This is just the most incredible what you say.
And then the 5th time, the daughter tells me, says, Uncle Alex, my mother is ill and she should have been in hospital quite a while ago, but she refuses to go. Perhaps if you ask her. So I said to my sister, my darling sister, I've waited for 58 years for this day. Now that we're together, please go to the hospital. I want you to be well. No, she refused. She said, if I got to go, I want to go in my house. Anyway, so the 6th time, the 5th time this was, 5th time, I left her. I went back to Paris, and maybe 2 weeks later, after my last visit, I had a dream as well, another dream. And in a dream, my sister is calling me. Alex, my brother, please come quickly, I need you.
Your sister who was alive?
My sister was not. First of all, yes, this was the dream. She's begging me to come quickly as she needs me. That was the dream. 3 days later, I get a phone call. Who is it? I'm your sister's doctor. She's lying in my hospital and she has begged me to ask you to come as quickly as possible. As I can tell you, she has only perhaps 1 week left to live. And the only name she pronounces all day long is yours. Please come as quickly as possible. I was at school, it wasn't on holidays. So I said to my headmaster, I must leave for Poland immediately. I went to Poland, rushed to the hospital, and the doctor took me aside, took me into his office, and he said, your sister unfortunately has got cancer, and she has perhaps the most 1 week left to live. It is now the end of the week. I've got to go back But before I left the hospital, of course I was all day and every day at my sister's bedside. But just before I left, I said to the doctor, who spoke a little German, I said, please doctor, in our religion, someone who's on the way to die, they have to say a special prayer. Please ask my sister just to repeat after me every word that I will say. And of course, what was it?
Shema Israel.
Shema Israel. My sister repeated word for word the Kriya Shema, at the end of which she kissed me and she said to me, my darling brother, God has answered my prayers, and now that I've seen you all these times, He can now take me. We kissed each other, embraced, and I left her and went back to Paris. Exactly 3 days later, in Paris, phone, same doctor. Mr. Rosin, your sister has passed away. So of course, I said Shiva, Shloshim, Kaddish. When the Rav of my shul in Paris, who was a big chaver of mine, he said to me, Alex, what you've just done for your sister, if you never do another mitzvah in your life, you've done the biggest mitzvah possible. And before I left, I got the rabbi of the Ramosh Shul to visit the hospital to my sister, and I said to him, please, if I cannot come for the Levaya, please make sure that you find her a spot not in the Christian cemetery, which he did.
In her town?
In that town. And that is our story. And of course, these people, Simcha Sonia Rothfeld, they came to England just a year after me. But because Rabbi Schoenfeld found him a job as a chazan in one of the north of England shul, because he had a beautiful voice. But throughout the years, from that moment on, I always kept in contact with them. And Baruch Hashem, they had 4 children of their own, but for them, I was their Bechor. For them, I was their eldest son. All these years. And even to the his last breath in the hospital, he said to me, my Tyra Alex, I want you to know what wonderful nachas I always had from you. Now I hope my brach to you is that you share the same real nachas from your children and from your grandchildren. I left the hospital. 2 hours later, he passed away.
Wow.
At the funeral, imagine, he was a very respected Bober Chassid in this Stamford Hill. Everybody knew him. At the Levaya, there were 2,000 Chassidim. But Sonia, before we left the house, she said to her son, when you bring the Aron from the hospital with your father to the house, I want you to speak to her son and to the Dayan of the Bob Hasidim. But at the Levaya, at the cemetery, I want only Alex to give the hesped. But I said to her, Sonia, how can you ask this of me? I'm not a Chassid. The 2,000 Chassidim will come. Who am me Anochi? Like Moshe Rabbeinu said, who am I to speak, to give a hesped to this wonderful nifter, Reb Simcha Rothfeld, among all his Chassidim? She said, yes. You deserve. He loved you so much. You should be the one to say the last words to him. I came to the cemetery. Imagine, in the big hall before the grave. And I said to myself, and of course, what language do I speak to these Hasidim? Not in English, in Yiddish. I said, Rebbeinu Shalom, all I'm asking you is to give me koiches, strength, to be able to stand and to give this hesped to this most wonderful tzaddik who always looked after me. And I gave the hesped. You could hear a fly in the room. We went to the grave.
You gave it in Yiddish?
All in Yiddish. We buried him, and afterwards, before going away, all these Hasidim came to me and said, we want to give you the biggest shikoyach. We have heard many haspedim, but your hesped has really touched our hearts. That's right, John. And since then, every time I go to London and I go to Stamford Hill, I get such a big coverage from all these Hasidim.
Wow.
Well, and then of course, in Paris, unfortunately, both my daughters married Frenchmen, Sephardi. We had, and of course, my children, we had, I have seven grandchildren, beautiful. And I said to myself, at the end, the conclusion of my story, I said, Hitler, you wanted to kill me, but I'm still here. You're gone, but I'm still alive. And I formed a wonderful mishpacha with Hashem's brachas. And Baruch Hashem, all my grandchildren are going in the Derech HaTorah, Derech Hashem, and I've got real beautiful nachas from all my grandchildren. I left 2 years ago. I left Paris, and but I also must tell you, in 2001, 2002, my darling Solange, she was nifter.
How many years were you married?
We were married for 30 Lev, Lamed Bet, 32 years. Most wonderful, wonderful marriage. My children had their children, as I said, 7 wonderful grandchildren. And then of course, I married a second time. And my second wife as well, unfortunately, was nifter, only after 6 years of marriage. And so 2 years ago, I always was a great Zionist, always dreamt to live in Eretz Yisrael. And so, even though I left my children and my grandchildren in Paris, I took the plunge and came to live in Eretz Yisrael to fulfill my eternal dream. And here I am, Baruch Hashem, very, very happy.
And
I have a grandson who made that Aliyah.
Wow.
He did his army in Israeli army, and Baruch Hashem, he married a Pitora Hadosha, he married Shrum, and he's made me a great grandfather.
Wow. And he's living here in Israel.
And he's living in Yerushalayim.
Yerushalayim. What more could you want, Alex? It's unbelievable.
This is the biggest bracha, and I thank Rebbeinu Shalom every minute of the day and every minute of my life. And not only for that, but as David HaMelech said in our Tehillim Shabbos morning, Yemei shenosenu bohem shivim shana ve'im begvuros shmonim shana. Span of normal life is 70, but some have the bracha to reach 80 and more so. And Baruch Hashem, I'm now 78 years old, but I've formed a wonderful family. I've got my wonderful children, Anne and Rivki, and all my lovely grandchildren with me. And that is Almighty's brachas. And in conclusion, I must tell you that I had visited the Lubavitcher Rebbe twice.
In 770 in Crown Heights.
Yes. The first time, privately. I had the schus to receive a private audience. I then related my story to the Rebbe. And he said to me, Rebbeinu Shalom has chosen you, of all the family, to survive Ad Hayom, because you had a very important mission to fulfill. What was your mission? To transmit Torah to hundreds of Talmidim. And that's what I did all my life.
Wow. So it's not only what you went through, but you kept your faith all the years.
Since I retired in 2009 from teaching, I then went from school to school to speak about my story. And on each occasion, there were questions after I finished relating my story. I always gave them the privilege of asking questions. And on each occasion, whichever school, there was always someone who said to me, please tell us how, in spite of all that you've gone through, number one, that you've remained mentally intact, but number two, how you've not only remained Jewish, but you've remained from Orthodox and a lover of Torah HaKadosh.
A lover of Hashem.
So my answer to them was, I know that hundreds gave up their religion. But because I always had love and affection, and I knew that it's Rebbeinu Shalom who was guiding me all my life, so I stood fast in my emunah. And what I transmit to you as a future generation, two words, emunah and bitachon. These two words have kept me alive and what I am.
So to translate it, Emunah is faith, and bitachon is
hope.
hope. Hope.
And I would always say to the children, you are the future generations. It is up to you to transmit this story to your children and make sure that the past, there are three things: the past, present and future. Without the past, there's no present. Without the present, there's no future. And as you are the future generation, make sure that this is never ever forgotten.
Alice, you have some pictures.
Yes.
Do you have a picture of your sister, your dear sister?
This is my dear sister.
You can see there is a resemblance. You can just
Can you see well?
very well.
Okay. You took one of my father?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. This is Sonia and Simcha Rothfeld. The first photo taken in Poland.
This is when you were still in Poland.
Still in Poland.
You can see they're just wonderful people. And there's
And this photo and story is in Washington Museum. Not only Washington Museum, but I did a video for Yad Vashem. I think. Yes, in 2009, I was in Eretz Israel and trying to trace my family. The lady in charge asked me if I had ever told my story, and I said no. So at that point she said, we'll arrange it that you should tell your story. And this is, so Yad Vashem has my story, and this is a copy, 2.5 hours copy. And this is the son of the Rav in Sosnovich, who advised my father, who now lives in Bnei Brak.
it's amazing.
And of course, I've made contact with him, and I went to see him. And we made a dinner in London on Rabbi Schoenfeld's 70th birthday.
It's a beautiful
And this is
picture.
him.
You can see this uniform.
Yes.
You have extremely fond memories of Rabbi Seinfeld.
Saw it?
And what date there was in?
This was in 1998. April 1998.
And you are in touch with Rabbi Schoenfeld's children?
I'm in touch with one of his sons, yes.
Jonathan.
Jonathan, yes. This is a photo of my sister's husband and the bus I took to go to Krakow. This is on my sister's farm, the first visit that I did.
Your very first visit? Wow.
Yes. See clearly?
Very clearly. These are priceless.
And this is on the outside the farm. It's this you've got my sister embracing me. You have her daughter and her niece. The young girl is my brother's daughter.
And do you have a picture of your brother?
I have a larger picture, but this is a picture of him as I left him.
As you left him, you can see wow, without any, you can see how impoverished in a way. Wow.
And this is a picture of on the boat from Poland. Being the rabbi of the community, this was a community in Croydon, South London. I was involved with the Jewish refuseniks of Russia with my colleagues, and in this picture every single week we would speak with the families of those who were imprisoned in Russia. And here, this was Sylvia Silberstein, who was in prison at the time, but we were successful in taking her out. And in the picture you can see myself, the Archbishop of London, and also a colleague of mine called Rabbi Philip Kingsbury. It's a very old photo. And here's a letter of my last Shabbat of the shul.
How many years were you a rabbi in?
Well, I was in three different shuls.
In France.
In France, I didn't know. I didn't officiate as rabbi. No, only in London, in England. But in France, of course, I officiated Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. I blew the shofar. I'm a balkore, and of course then for a number of years, I also I organized the Ashkenazi minyan for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur for many ex-Jewish Polish people who still held fast to the Jewish religion. So I used to do sometimes the whole thing from A to Z on Yom Kippur. But in every shul, in every kehillah that I was, Baruch Hashem, I know that from people who write to me still in contact, that I obviously left a very good impression, which I can say this is all due, of course, with the help of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And Alice, can I ask, with your brother in Poland, are you still in touch, or is he still alive?
No. If I tell you that on my last visit, not even my last visit, the visit before, we were all together in my sister's house. My brother, who was extremely poor, lost his wife, lost his job, and was extremely poor. When he saw me the first time, he got the impression that I must be a very rich man, nicely dressed, coming by air from France. He thought that I was a very rich man. And as I knew that he was poor, because he told me in his letters, so he expected obviously that I would give him a large sum of money. But I told him, you're mistaken. It's not because I've come 6 times to Poland, and it's not because I wear perhaps a very nice suit, and I've come by air all the way from France, that makes me rich. Far from it. I'm just a teacher. I even live in a rented apartment, don't even own my own house. So I want you to forget this stupid idea. But because he saw that I did not give him, so he, one minute sitting down, next minute it says to his son, if that's the case, we're going home. And he left us, and from that moment on, he cut all contact with me. And I asked the guide, because I'm even to this present day, I'm in contact with the guide, Polish guide, who's now like part of my family. And I pleaded with her, I said, please tell my brother that he's completely wrong. But he didn't want to listen. So there the contact went, and even my sister's daughter, who when I came there she was so happy. But I think for them to have known, have found out that I was Jewish, and they being very strong Catholics all their lives, it was, and not having ever met a Jewish person.
Might have been the very first Jew they ever met.
It was, and for them, I was told by my Rav, for them it was a tremendous big shock to have found out that their mother has a Jewish brother after all those years.
And have they wanted to keep the contact? Any of the
No.
grandchildren or the
I have
daughter?
no contact whatsoever today. Well, very unfortunate, but that's how it is. But I'm sorry, because number one, they're all Yidden. They're all Jewish. My niece is, my sister had, like myself, 2 daughters and six grandchildren. But they don't wish to know.
They never asked to meet with your daughters? Or?
No, they've cut off all contact.
Can I ask, Alice, when you met your sister and you sat with her in the hospital, did she ask you about what does it mean to be Jewish, or what was it like having the faith of our parents? Did she ever regret that she never had that opportunity to know what it was to be Jewish? Or
to be honest,
it's a very hard question.
I was never confronted with this. For her, I didn't come as someone who was Jewish.
You came as a brother.
I came as a brother. And therefore, for her, there was no question of religious, Jewish, no.
It was her brother that she had longed to see.
This was a long lost
her dream.
Wish, a dream to see her brother. And that's all it meant for her. But the fact, as I said earlier, that she heard me say that she was born Jewish and she would die Jewish, and the fact that she's standing in, and not only before, but before that, she stood in the shul and kissed the Sefer Torah. What more could she ask them? So this was, if you ask me what was her reaction, this was.
It was a very exceptional.
Accepted.
You facilitated her re-entry into her heritage, taking her to the shul, the Ramah Shul. It's not only the Ramah Shul, the Ger Tzedek is buried in the.
Yes, and for me, this was sufficient to know that she accepted it without exactly telling me in words.
You're right, yes. The actual action
her
was more
action,
important than any words.
much more important than words itself. And when I took it to, and I saw Kiss the Servitora, this was...
You know, Alice, your parents...
I couldn't even express what I thought at that moment.
There were many forces. Your parents were obviously... They must be crying in Shemaim. They must be so happy when they saw them.
But I'm sure, as you said, like everybody else said to me, they must have lots and lots of nachas from me.
That you were reunited.
And I have never forgotten. But what hurts me most, even to today, is that I cannot trace, because I don't really know, I cannot tell you anything about my parents. No one in the world can, to this day, tell me anything about my parents. And when I try to trace my parents, my family, first question is, what are their names? I don't even know their names. Where do they live? What did your parents do? I cannot answer these questions.
Do you know your birth date? Well, how do you know your birth date?
Birth date, because I think my father, he gave all the dates
How can you gave the dates?
To the boy Katarzyna.
You know, listening to your it's not only a story, listening to your journey, listening to your life, just listening to your life. There's one nace after another. You had one malach, one guiding angel after another.
Exactly.
Hashem hand was in every single stage of your life.
Exactly.
It's unbelievable. And it's like a circle that is being closed to have reunited with your sister. What are the chances that such a thing would happen? It was meant to be.
It was meant to be. And I spoke to you about my visit to Lubavitch Rebbe. On my second visit, as I was queuing up like everybody else to receive the dollar, I went with two friends of mine. And my two friends before me, they passed, they got the dollar, and the Rebbe said, when it came to my turn, he held my hand and he looked at me and he remembered who I was. Why? And he gave me the dollar. And of course, I went away. I hadn't gone more than 2 minutes away when suddenly his Gabbai recalled me. He said, the Rebbe wants to see you again. I came back and he said, this was in 1983, my second visit. He says, here is a second dollar for your sister. Wow. Can you imagine? I knew nothing about my sister in 1983. I met my sister in 1995. Wow. And he said, here, I want you to give this dollar to your sister. And I gave her in the Ramos Shul.
The dollar from the Rebbe?
Yes.
Is this story known? This is just unbelievable.
Well, I've done three, 4 videos. So my stories and my story is here as well.
Did you, after the Rebbe said this, did you believe that this would actually happen? That you'd be giving this dollar to your sister?
I had not the foggiest idea. Never in my life would I dream. I mean, I said to myself, okay, I think of my sister, but what did the Rebbe talk to me, gives me $1 and he tells me, this is for your sister? Who I've never met.
That you didn't even know there was a lie?
I didn't know this. I always hoped that she was alive, but I never knew. And in here, you see, I don't know if you know, this is Hamodia. This is in a magazine, Hamodia, and it says at the bottom, I don't know if you can read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or what does it say here? I cannot see. Yeah, it says the Odyssey of a Child Survivor, Reb Moshe Eliezer Rosin story.
And here it's mentioned in...
And the whole story, my story, is in here. With pictures. Oh, yes. I'm going to show you. Oh, yeah.
The Odyssey of a Child Survivor. Wow. Here you see you smiling. It's one of the first pictures that I've seen you smiling.
You can see the boat. And this is actually the photo of the Rav.
This was the very... This was the Rav that basically saved your life.
Saved my life.
It gave the answer to take to this very poor town, not to have the Brit Milah.
Right.
What a special Rav.
See, well?
And you in touch with his son?
Yes. This is special, as I've shown you. And also, do you see my passport? It's just...
Wow. Amazing. That's it.
Yes. This is Simcha Rothfeld and myself, taken in Poland. And this is my brother on my visit to Poland.
And they have a picture of Rabbi Schoenfeld?
Pardon?
Is there a picture of Rabbi Schoenfeld?
Yes. Wait a minute. Yeah, here. Rabbi Schoenfeld. I have a nice picture. There were 3.
Oh, here it's inside here as well.
Yes.
They do have, I'm just going to show for our viewers. This is in the article that they have. He looked so distinguished. Rabbi Dr. Solomon Schoenfeld.
Yes.
And Alex, if I'm just going to show this for our viewers. This is a picture with you and Reb Simcha.
This picture of Reb Simcha, and this is the Rav. When he was older, the Rav of
This is the top one is UN Reb Simcha, and this is the Rav of. It's amazing.
The Rav that saved my life.
The Rav that saved your life.
It's a nice, lovely picture.
So he was like a father to you as well?
Sure. And inside, this was the brochure for the dinner that we made for him. And inside the brochure, of course, is it that I ever again.
This is the embarkation of your host. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. See, I've four videos. One I've on YouTube. You can find me as well. On YouTube. It's in English, French.
And the other video that was.
This is from New York. And it's called Project Witness. I don't know if you ever heard of it. You have?
I have.
Well, I was invited 3 years ago. I was invited to do an interview and be filmed by cameramen and journalists from New York in London, and they were so impressed. They took it back to New York, and every year Hamodia, it's Rosin Lichtenstein, who's at the head of Hamodia in New York. She organizes a very, very big dinner, to raise funds. And at such dinners, she invites a personality, well-known personality. And just before I came on scene, it was Rav Lau,
Chief
Rabbi, who for 2 years was the guest of honor. When this cameraman and journalist filmed me, they were so impressed that when they had the committee meeting to decide who they wanted for that particular year as guest of honor, the journalist put my name forward. And I got a phone call from him to say that it was unanimously accepted to invite me as the guest of honor for a week of conferences in New York. And then I received this phone call from Rosin Lichtenstein from New York, telling me to go to Bnei Brak, to her travel agency, and pick up the tickets with LL, or the American Airways, I think, and for a duration of 8 days. I was met at the airport, New York, very big chassid, with a beautiful car. I was taken to my hotel, very beautiful hotel, and she said to him, "You are his driver for the whole week of his stay, and you should take him to all the best restaurants in New York." And as I have family in the States, he also, because every evening of the 8 days, there was a dinner in a different venue. It started off with New York, I think was a Flatbush, yeah. And not only that, but she said to me, when she phoned me the first time, each night that you'll be speaking to at least between 800 and 1,000 people who come to these dinners. But it's true. I'm used to public speaking, so
Being a rabbi, being
Yeah.
a head of the community.
I've always been in the public eye since the age of 15. I became a madrich, b'nai Akiva, so I was, and then of course being in different communities. So the first night, big dinner, very plush hotel. But the mayor of New York present, other dignitaries, marvelous. And of course, then suddenly I was in front of all these people. We were in different parts of New York. We went to Monsey, we went to Lakewood, and it was for men and women. Of course, with the Mechitza, it was only very frum who attended this thing. But this was for me a dream as well. Would I ever dreamt to be asked to be the guest of honor in place of Rav Lowe and to speak to 1,000 people?
And you related your story.
And I related my story.
So this little boy that never saw a present in his life, never ate an orange.
That's right.
But this little boy that kept his emunah all the years.
Baruch Hashem.
And kept his faith in Hashem. Well, Alex, this has been the most incredible time spent together. I cannot thank you enough. May you just admire this room only in nachas and health and all of Hashem's blessings, which you so deserve.
Amen.
You've witnessed things that...
Mipicha ad lemala.
Absolutely. You've witnessed things that are indescribable. But your emunah is also indescribable. And you are somebody we can all really strive to emulate. You have such chaim, you have so positive. You are unique. You really, and your story is unique.
Thank you.
And I cannot thank you enough. There are no words to describe my appreciation for first of all meeting you and for you giving me your valuable time and relating your...
It's my pleasure, and I feel, and I feel that the more I speak, I think it's, for me it's a mission. It's a mission to do this, to make sure that it is well known, it is well kept as history for the future, that let the next generation and the generation after know exactly what people went through, but nevertheless that they stood fast all their lives in Yiddishkeit. And that is what my message is, that not only should they transmit the history of the Holocaust, but also for the people who remained steadfast and were not angry with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like many hundreds others who discarded their religion because they said, Evo haya Hashem? Where was God in all this?
It's a beautiful message, Alex, and...
Or as it says in Tehillim, Ayana Elokehem.
Alex, I think you also symbolize the karas hatov, that you had such karas hatov for the woman who brought you up in those 6, from a baby till
Yes.
you have tremendous karas hatov, tremendous gratitude for non-Jewish people that they never, the town folk didn't tell the Germans about, or fellow Poles, and she saved your life.
She did indeed.
So you have embodied also this tremendous gratitude, this karas hatov.
And that's why as I said, I've never forgotten her till this day. Her name's constantly on my lips, and even my brother, to have found him, we were so close.
But by finding your brother, and by your determination to have this karas hatov, to thank him, and he found your sister for you as well.
He found my sister for me. me.
So he was Hashem's agent in order to find your
Exactly.
sister. So
I
you could be
found one
reunited.
very good shliach in the Polish guide.
Did she ever remarry? Or did she ever marry this Polish
Yes,
guy?
yes. And every year, till I came to Eretz Israel, every year she has friends in Paris. So she comes to Paris every year, and each time she phones me up and she comes down to me, to my house.
Well, Alex,
And something more. She told me her mother passed away just a little while after my sister. And where her mother is buried, although it's in the end of the Christian cemetery, but she's buried right next to my sister, who's on the other side.
that's amazing.
And every year, every time she goes to visit the cemetery, she lights a candle for her mother and for my sister. Isn't this a shliach? Is this someone
It's
wonderful,
Min
an
Hashemayim.
angel, Min Hashemayim?
It really is. Your whole story is, it's so illuminating. It's so special, Alex. It's so special. So you must just always smile and always know that Hashem's with you, and you really do have a mission to tell as many people your life's journey, which you have. It's unique. And may you just have all of Hashem's blessings.
I'm delighted
Mother
to have
and
related
Father.
the story to you, and I'm very delighted to have made your acquaintance. It's wonderful. And I think what you are doing is also great work. To dedicate your time, apart from your professional job, to dedicate your time to all this.
To document your story, Alex, it's the greatest honor and privilege. It really is. And from the bottom of my heart, I really want to thank you.
Well, let me say it's been a great pleasure, and I thank you for coming, and I thank you for filming and listening to me.
It's a pleasure. And Alex, I just want to personally thank you.
In exchange for all this,
I just want to thank you so much, Alex. It's been such an honor and a privilege. And I just wish you all of Hashem's blessings, and thank you so much.
thank you very much.
You really are extremely special. And this has been, there are no words to describe how special this has been.
It's wonderful. Wonderful to meet you, wonderful to speak to you and relate everything that I've said. It's been said with pleasure and time giving. No bother at all, no problem.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you.
So let me finish with this.
Thank you so much.